Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a transfer talk live in association with Match Bingo, and you can download the Match Bingo app by heading to 1874.io/matchbingo. You'll be able to find out everything that they do and buy yourself some bingo cards that are going on around the World Club Cup that's got a few days left to run, and also the Women's Euros as well. And it's a chance for you to win between £25 and £250. And I've won £100 a few times recently for just putting £2 on. So it is worth a go if that kind of thing is your thing. If it's not, that's absolutely fine as well. But if you want to download Match Bingo, use our link and that will help the channel. As I mentioned, it's a Transfer Talk Live. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, and I am joined by, for the love of Paul McGrath's very handsome Neil Dunworth, sporting the new Aston Villa leisure wear that I've got to say, I've got that T-shirt. It's one of the hottest T-shirts I've ever worn in my life. So it can't be as hot in Ireland as it is here now.
It's getting there. It's going to be. There was actually, the government have put out a yellow and an orange weather warning for heat in Ireland over the weekend. So yeah, so I'm going to the ocean. And I was just telling Dan off air there that if this is breaking tonight, and if there's more stuff breaking over the weekend, I'll be like, next stop will be New York, where I'm going to. So it's going to be lacking in internet reception. So you can say thank you if everybody signs for Villa over the weekend, because I won't have any reception to cover it.
Yeah, Villa are going to sign everyone this weekend when Neil doesn't have access to the World Wide Web. Neil's taken a trip back to the early 90s with no internet. Yeah. Few people joining us in the comments now, and to join us live. We'll take some questions near the end, but we've got a few things that we want to talk about this evening. I quite like doing it late night, something quite nice about it. So we're going to talk about Marco Asensio, who will not be joining Aston Villa Football Club. We're going to talk about Marco Bizot, who Neil and I have just spent some time trying to get his name right before we came on, and I'm not sure I succeeded there. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what Tottenham are doing as well, and perhaps that sliding door moment where Tottenham have got themselves in the Champions League and we didn't on the last day of the season, and what that means for Aston Villa. Let's start with the goalkeeper then, Neil. Saw earlier on social media that you were busy on Y Scout, so I'm expecting big things from you. I know that he's Dutch. I know that he's got one cap. I know that he played Champions League football last season for Brest. I've seen a couple of excellent saves on compilation reels where every player always looks like the best player in the world when you watch their compilation reel on YouTube. But I'm hoping you're going to come in with the serious data and the serious knowledge here, to be honest.
I'll be honest, I've had 30 minutes to take a look at this guy. So everything is non-conclusive at the moment. But one thing I did do was, I went and I watched a Champions League game that he played against PSV, and it turns out, I won't say I watched a whole lot of it.
You did watch that half an hour.
Yeah. I watched about 28 minutes of it, though. It was just cut up to his. So I know on my scout, I was able to dissect it down, cut it up to just his interactions during that game as well.
So good, and that is.
It turns out that 23 clean sheets in League One, exactly. But it turns out that I actually picked an absolute sparkler of a game for him that he played, because afterwards I went back and went, I wonder is this him every week? And I googled Marco Bizot versus PSV, and it just came up saying what a game, like everything was just waxing lyrically about him. And if that's if what his performance in that game is a precursor of things to come, he will be a very, very, very able deputy to Demi Martinez. I would advise people to go and watch that, because he makes at least 7 brilliant saves in that game. And Brest ended up winning it 1-0 as well. So
yeah.
And you get to watch Jonathan Bakayoko, who now won't be probably coming to Aston Villa at this stage.
No, I mean, we're probably, now we're doing this on Bizot or Bizot, however you say it, we're probably rooting him coming, because we've got a great track record, the two of us, of doing podcasts on new signings that then don't happen. But I think Brest were a decent addition to the Champions League last season. They won some really big games, didn't they? And he would have been a big part of that. We've just seen his clean sheet records flash up on the screen. Gig Sharma in the comments is saying as well, he's used to being a first choice keeper for Brest and Alkmaar. He's got tons of experience, and I don't want to be unkind, but I don't think it'll be difficult to be a better number 2 for Villa than Robin Olsen, even though what I've just said is in fact unkind.
Yeah, look, I suppose if you're talking about experience and stuff, Robin Olsen had that in spades. He had tons of international experience, and he had tons of club experience. But look, as we all know, when Robin Olsen stepped into goals for Aston Villa, he's like everybody was very, very complimentary of him when he was there, for his dressing room presence, for what he did on the training field. When he stood in games, there was a noticeable drop off to Emi Martinez. I think, realistically speaking, as well, that's the Emi Martinez factor as well. A lot of people, were ready to, as rumors intensifying, as Twitter kind of ramps up, and everybody was talking about, people were talking about Martinez's uh, team looking to move him on to Man United, and then there was a backlash of fans going, "Sell him, get rid of him. If he doesn't want to be here, get rid of him." He's a very, very good footballer, and I think, in the cold light of day, when you look at the difference in performances between he played and when Robin Olsen played over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, or 3 years, should I say, it was night and day. And yeah, as I say, well, this guy's going to come in and be our first choice anyway for the first game of the season anyway, because he's going to be starting. You'd like to think he's going to be starting that game anyway.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, I don't know whether you picked up this or garnered anything around this on Y Scout Neil, but I think one of the things Olsen really struggled with was something that Emmy does really well with, the kind of ball at his feet. The defence always looked nervy when Olsen was on the ball. He quite often misplaced a pass or kick the ball out of play. Is there anything around his, and I've put you on the spot here, anything around how the goalkeeper is with his feet?
To be honest with you, he's a bit, from what I saw, is he's a bit limited with regards to his distribution, but he's it's not his game. It's not
Okay.
his game. I think that from what I saw in that game against PSV, like, reflex saves are brilliant. Like, there was just really, really good. Get down to his posts. I saw something pop up there to say that he wasn't really very good at coming for crosses. I saw one of the comments there. I don't know. I saw something a bit different. Once again, it's 28 minutes of his performance against PSV in one game.
We're going with what we've got here. It's all we've got.
Exactly. Yeah. I saw, like, from what I saw there, it wasn't so bad. Yeah, he's not going to come out into a group of players and stuff like that, but not many goalkeepers do that, like Emi Martinez does as well. As I've said before, Aston Villa's corner defensive routine is, if the ball goes to the back post, it's Emi Martinez's or nobody else's. We don't have a routine. We don't have a defensive strategy if Martinez doesn't get to the back post. And that's something that will have to be worked on, regardless of who our goalkeeper is next year. So from that point of view, I look, it's an incomplete evaluation, obviously, at the moment. But what I've seen from him is that he's pretty consistent, as you said there. Good shot stopper. Limited with the ball at his feet, but again, he's not somebody that I saw in this game where he was raking the ball 60 yards diagonally across the field to try and get it to Matty Casher, to Ian Matson, high up on the wing. So again, another thing is the team plays differently. So Brest play a different style of football than Aston Villa. So, but remember as well. So, and I'm not digging out the guy on Twitter in case he's watching this, but somebody on Twitter said to me, "Look at his heat map. He doesn't move around enough. Like, this guy barely moves." And I'm saying,
the goalkeeper.
Well, he's a goalkeeper, is right. But what I would say here is that, specifically with statistics, when you're watching highlight reels for teams, he can only do what he's being asked to do as well. At the same time, he can only do what the team style is. And in 2025, the team style, it also dictates what the goalkeeper can do. Whereas previously, it was a case of, can he block marbles? Yeah, well, then he's a good goalkeeper. Now it's more nuanced, I suppose, there. And I don't know. Like, I've never scouted a goalkeeper until 5-6 weeks ago when I started doing that. So I certainly don't have the answers on it, but it's an interesting learning curve as you go through it.
I can't imagine Brest playing with the highest line, and the snippets I saw in the Champions League, the bits I remember seeing last season, don't remember them being particularly expansive. They got some great results, but it was more from being in transition from what I remember. Like, if he doesn't come out of his penalty area, it's most likely because Brest are playing with a low block. But the report I saw said that Emery is fully on board with this. He ticked boxes that Emery wanted, and with the number 2 as well, it was always going to be interesting to see what kind of route we went down. Would we go for a younger number 2 who could perhaps grow and learn off Emmy, or whoever the number 1 is next season, or would we go for another experienced head who knows that they're going to be number 2 and that's their role, and they're happy to accept that and happy to go with it and be good around the place and just do their job when they're called upon? And that is inevitably now looking like the route that Villa go down. And I'm quite happy with it. Look, I can't say I know loads about him. You probably can tell from the show already that I don't know very much about this goalkeeper at all. I'm not going to come out here and pretend. And maybe I'll try and get someone on in the coming days who would be better placed to have knowledge on him. Maybe Neil will go away and do 5 hours on Y Scout and come back and know everything there is to know about this goalkeeper. But ultimately, as David Starrs just said in the comments, if Emery likes him, I like him. Let's just wait and see. It's not the most exciting kind of first transfer of the window, Neil, but it is a transfer that's a necessity. It's a bit of business that Villa needed to do, getting a second choice goalkeeper in.
Well, third transfer of the window. So just to kind of address, I suppose, kind of an underlying kind of current on social media as well. A lot of people are like, when are Villa going to sign someone? And yes, we haven't signed any big name or marquee signings, but potentially we could be in a situation whereby we're looking at, getting functional signings done first, and if there's something there, then make those marquee signings. You mentioned about, or we will get onto it, should I say, in a moment, about the sliding doors moment between Spurs and ourselves, and their business. But yeah, it's like, realistically speaking, is squad chemistry something that Unai Emery is prioritizing this year over 5 or 6 different signings? We'll find out over the next couple of weeks, I think, for sure.
Yeah, but look, Villa will make more exciting signings than this summer. That's absolutely certain.
Dan, is this guy, like, the only benchmark we have at Aston Villa for Dutch goalkeepers is Stefan Posma?
Oh, I remember Posma.
Yeah, Posma. Yeah. Don't Google it in your work computer about Stefan Posma, please. Do not do that. You could get HR onto you afterwards.
No, don't Google Leon Bailey today either, for goodness sakes. Geek Sharman's having an absolute field day in the chat and providing some great stats and great comments. Dutch contingent grows to 5. Marlon, Matson, Bogart, Swinkles, and now Bizot as well. Now 6. He's right. Redmond as well through the door. So Villa have kind of moved away from South Americans and gone Dutch, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, it's we may not be finished there as well. The Dutch league is obviously, it's not a league that I don't even think. Trying to think where the coefficient is at the moment. I don't even think they're in the top 5 leagues anymore. I think that they were usurped by that. I could be wrong on that. But there's obviously a lot of talent there. Like, you just look at the Dutch under-19 squad that was in the Euros, the Euro under-19s. Go have a look at those guys. The Dutch under-21 squad as well. There's talent in Dutch football. But you have to kind of catch them young, or in this instance, catch them at 34 years of age on their way out the door. So it'll be interesting to see if that Dutch contingent does grow.
Someone who's about to turn 40, 34 seems, that's young. He's a young man at 34 coming through the door. Right, let's move on and talk about Marco Asensio then. Looks like he's going to Fenerbahce. Has been reported by a really reputable source in Turkey that Marco Asensio is I think PSG have agreed fee potentially with Fenerbahce for him to go there. Villa not in the running to sign Marco Asensio. Now, people will be disappointed. There'll probably be a mixed reaction to it, actually, as there is with most things. Some Villa fans will say, I'm glad we're not signing him at his age on those wages. Other Villa fans will be a bit disappointed. It obviously makes us another man down from last season. If Asensio doesn't sign, it kind of feels like someone who we didn't actually have already needs replacing in some ways. There's no doubt that he did make an impact. He was quieter as time went on, I think, but Asensio definitely made an impact for Villa, scored some really, really important goals and got us very close to qualifying for the dream of Champions League football for a second consecutive season. Now, I think if Villa had qualified for the Champions League, I think this is probably a deal that happens, but because of the situation Villa are in with PSR and SCR, I think that's basically, and the fact Fenerbahce are a Champions League team this season and Villa are, and I think all these things have come together, and Asensio to Villa is now not going to happen. And like I say, people will have differing opinions on whether it's a disappointment or not. Where do you sit with that, Neil?
My big thing with Marco Asensio is I will not let the last 6 or 7 games or 8 games, maybe, if he's Aston Villa career, cloud the first 8 games. Like, he was there was times there where he was coming off the bench and we were at nothing in games and he was turning games in his own. And, with his goals, admittedly, and there was nothing more beautiful than a Marco Asensio snapshot in the box, because you knew it was going to go either close to going in or it was going to go in the back of the net. That guile, that kind of intelligence, that footballing intelligence that he had. Yes, he didn't have probably the Premier League intangibles and makeup of a player, that he could get around the field as much as we probably wanted him to, get stuck into players and stuff. He's a very nuanced footballer. And I think that, his time at Real Madrid and his time at PSG, probably we wanted to believe that there was more than there wasn't from that nuance there. But he scored some very important goals for Aston Villa this year, and he's, as I say, like for somebody with the amount of experience he has, you're buying that experience into the dressing room. And let's not underestimate that. I talked about squad chemistry and squad and that kind of experience within the dressing room as well. How do you get over weeks like we had or games like we had against Manchester United? You need people who've been at the top of the game to kind of maybe rally the troops, or to be that this is just factual stuff. You need to have that dressing room kind of galvanization that come from experienced players and players that have won at the top level. Now, on the other side of this, if he's somebody that the club have set evaluation on and said, right, we're not going to go above this, considering we're in PSR situations, considering the club have to play within SCR rulings, which is fine. Can he be replaced with a player with a player that would give us what he gives us around the field? Maybe not in the dressing room. I think he absolutely can do. I don't know who that player is, so I think the club have gambled on that as well. And also, the other elephant in the room is, now we get potentially, or probably more often than not, we'll get Morgan Rogers. It's 10:25. I forgot his name there. Morgan Rogers off that right wing and back into the central position, where I think every Aston Villa player thinks that that's his best position. So we'll see what happens there. Do they maybe do they plump up that right midfield position as opposed to going for number 10 and maybe play Rogers in there a small bit more? But it's not the last piece in the puzzle that we needed as Asensio. I thought he'd come back here on loan. I would imagine that PSG have pulled the trigger because they're getting paid an actual transfer fee for it. And that's just the business of football, I think, but there's plenty more fish in the sea.
Yeah. Look, we know the landscape we're looking at financially, and Asensio's wages, it's going to be difficult to fit them in, to that landscape. And I think he'll go with good wishes from Villa fans. I think the crucial thing is here, I think Unai Emery would have wanted him. I think if he could have signed him, or we as a club could have signed him, we would have done, because I think Unai Emery's wanted to work with him for so long, and he wouldn't want to have cut it short at 6 months. And I also think he would have just been a top player in the Europa League on a Thursday night. Discount the Premier League from our thoughts, where obviously he would have made an impact as well. But I do think in the Europa League, I think he'd have been an absolutely fantastic player to watch on a Thursday night. You watch Isco in the Conference League final, just that type of player in Europe on a Thursday, a genuine number 10, a Spanish footballing legend. I think he would have been brilliant for Villa on a Thursday night, but it's not to be. I do think there's an element of kind of lessons learned with the Coutinho fiasco as well. I do think that might be in the back of the club's mind. They've only just managed to kind of rectify that in 2025. Could a similar thing with time gone on with Asensio? Would it have been worth the risk on those wages? Maybe the club have looked at that as well. But I do ultimately think that if we could have signed him, if we could have made it work, if we were in the Champions League, Unai Emery would have wanted to. So he'll probably be a little bit disappointed, but Villa will have to Villa will have to make additions in the attacking positions, because they're already Rashford and Asensio down, and potentially Leon Bailey off to Saudi as well. So we're already looking at least two more attacking players to come into the fold now. Let's talk about the third thing then that we were going to talk about tonight. And this is an incredible bit of business from Tottenham. Looks like Tottenham are going to sign Morgan Gibbs-White for £60 million, and kind of feel people are looking at us and saying right now, well, this is a Villa podcast. What's that got to do with anything? Just wanted to talk about it because obviously we just missed out on Champions League, and we're seeing now with us not being able to sign Asensio that the impact that's had on us. Tottenham finished 17th but won the Europa League and have got themselves Champions League football. What that's done is, I don't want to say created a monster, because we don't know how good Spurs are going to be, but it's enabled them to get in two very, very good Premier League players in the last week when Gibbs-White does go on to sign for them, which I think he will have. Obviously got Kudos from West Ham as well. It does feel like at the moment, I know I've got full faith in what everyone's doing and confidence in what the Villa Transfer Committee will be doing. Obviously, it doesn't feel like there's loads going on, but there will be. But other teams are strengthening, and it feels like Spurs are going to be back up competing towards gunning for the Champions League football and gunning for top 5, and obviously being in the Champions League as well. So the teams around us, I don't want to get too worried by it at this stage, Neil, but that's an improving Spurs, which does have an impact on Villa.
Yeah, it does. I've got a bit more of a different take.
Okay, you're welcome to. That's fine.
And this is that I don't know if Morgan Gibbs-White is a Thomas Frank player.
Yeah, I think he said he did say in the Athletic he's a long-term admirer, I believe I read.
Yeah, like it's so there's a lot of different dynamics here. Like what kind of the reason I say that is like how are Spurs gonna trim the fat from their squad as well? You know, like there's I was looking down through it, like what happens to James Maddison here? What happens to Rodrigo Bentancur? What happens to there's quite a lot of players there that Spurs have. Now I'm not saying that Thomas Frank obviously isn't capable of doing the job there. I think he is, but Thomas Frank for me is the big. He is he's the cornerstone. He's what needs to be right, or else it's going to come crumbling down again. And for Spurs, they've gotten a really, really good manager in there. They have gotten a really good manager in there, but can his Brentford style translate to Spurs and get them to where they need to get to? Can it get the best out of the creative aspects that he has there? Like if he brings in the likes of Johan Vissa in there as well, into the club, what happens with their strikers? They have Richarlison there. They have Dominic Solanke, who they spent 60 million on last year. It looks like Brentford
Tell as well, haven't they?
They just signed Tell as well, yeah. So like they have a ton of talent there. It's gonna be like arguably for me, I don't think they needed a whole pile of changes in their team. I think they just needed a good manager.
I think they need to reinforce in central midfield. I would say. I mean, you presume Kudus and Gibbs-White have been brought into play, so then that kind of leaves one other player to play off the striker if that's the formation that they're going to go with. Gibbs-White would go in the middle, maybe as a left 10, depending on what they do at left back. I would think, but I suppose. Now they're going into a season now where they're in the Champions League and they want to be towards the top end of the Premier League. They're thinking we need different options. We need a squad. And Spurs fans have complained for a long time at Daniel Levy and managers not being backed and not spending money. It looks like they're doing that now. And Morgan Gibbs-White was one of the standout players in the Premier League last season. And we've kind of been in the position that Forest are in as well. You've got to feel a little bit sorry for them, haven't you? The fact that they're losing their talisman, their best player, losing him to Tottenham, having already lost Brennan Johnson a couple of years earlier to Tottenham as well. It just shows you Forest have finished 7th and got themselves Europe, but they're still losing players to Tottenham who finished 17th. Like, it's difficult to make that kind of next step. And we did it, and now we're trying to get back up there again. It's difficult for us as well. It does seem that the kind of traditional big six, they just always find a way to get themselves back there or keep themselves there.
Yeah, it is like I just like. I don't think it's a given that Spurs are just magically going to be top 6 again.
No, I'd agree with that. That's fair.
I don't think it was all down to Ange. I think there's a lot of rebuilding to be done there. I think that they will see a raft of players go out as well. Yeah, for like as I say, Spurs are obviously they're from a financial model, and I'm trying my best not to talk about from financials. From a financial model, they absolutely dwarf Aston Villa, dwarf it.
Yeah,
from what they've done and the revenue point of view and all that. And Villa want to get to Spurs level, and over the next 3 to 5 years potentially they will from a financial point of view. But I'm going to be honest. And say that like Unai Emery can squeeze blood out of a stone with the talent that he has, with teams. He's always done it. And it's not just at Aston Villa. He did it at Sevilla, did it at Villarreal, has done it with Aston Villa again. Like retooling for us is going to be a bit more difficult, but I still think like getting more and more and more European football, staying at the top of the league, not having a year where we finish 17th. That's I think the Spurs. I think Spurs are in a couple of ways with the amount of players they have in their team. I think they're flying a bit close to the sun. But I'm reluctant to say that because of the bounce back that Chelsea have had. But I just don't think that Spurs have that model of that trading model that Chelsea have developed, because Chelsea had developed that 10, 15 years ago with the amount of players they would loan to Groningen and would loan to teams out in the Dutch league or wherever, and
Championship as
then
well.
exactly out to the championship and then sell them on for decent money. So they've had this trading kind of juggernaut for years. Man City have it now as well. Spurs don't really have that trading juggernaut. They don't, like, they had the Daniel Levy who wouldn't sell players cheap, but you know, I just want to see what they're going to morph into from that side of things, you know, from that side of the balance sheet, because looks like, and there's reports out there that they're going to make a massive bid for Adam Wharton as well. They will bring their spending to 175 million. You know, teams are going to stay close to the sun from PSR and SCR as well. You know, if times to come, but I don't know with Spurs. I don't know whether the bounce back is going to be as swift as is expected, but we'll see. Like, is squad chemistry better than squad additions this next year? Like, man, Newcastle got into got into Newcastle Champions League team next year. Yes, they are. Newcastle got into the Champions League this year, with making relatively no massive additions to their squad. One or two here and there over the last couple of years, but you know, for all the money they have, they've been hamstrung. Eddie Howe has done a great job because he's a good manager. Squad cohesion, squad chemistry has gotten better. The likes of Jacob Murphy scoring however many goals. I think he got double-digit goals last year.
Yeah, he did.
He's not a double-digit goal scorer in the Premier League, except the manager believed in him and got it out of him. I think that's worth more than that's underrated, should I say, as opposed to just throwing money at the problem as well.
No, I think what it just does show, it just shows you how important Champions League football is, and being there, it does enable you to go and spend 50 million, 60 million on players. We did it last summer with Onana, spending 50 million on an individual. In Spurs now are going out and spending over 50 million on two players. It does just show you what Champions League football can do and how important it is. And if we'd have qualified back-to-back and done 2 seasons of Champions League, it would have been monumental for the football club. And unfortunately, it's not what's happened. And it shows you how well we've done to be competing, because like you've said, Spurs' financial model, we're miles off that. We're nowhere near it, you know, and our wages to turnover is absolutely huge. And Spurs' isn't, because of the things that they do with the stadium and what they've managed to develop with their club, with the off the pitch stuff, with the infrastructure, that they're all massively important things. But I do think it feels at the moment like other teams are really busy and Villa aren't, but we will make additions. And what you have to remember is we're a better team than Spurs before the signings, and we will make signings as well. So I agree with you to an extent as well, that it doesn't just necessarily mean Spurs catch up with us. But, you know, in the transfer window, we're 10th of July now and not feeling like Villa have done any kind of big business. It is interesting to see how the other teams are operating and what they're doing and how they're improving. And we just want Villa to try and improve as well. And the only slight concern I have is that we are men down on the second half of last season already, with the players that won't be coming back at the moment as it stands. Rashford, Asensio, Dizazi, obviously now Olsen will be getting replaced. If Leon Bailey goes, he'll probably get replaced. But it feels like other teams are improving at the moment, and we're not. Hopefully we'll get there, and we'll have some new players to talk about in the coming weeks now.
I think we will. It's
probably at the weekend when you're not here.
Well, yeah, but look, as I said, the immediate need to get players in the door is like there's nothing won. There's no trophies given out on the 10th of July.
No.
Like, arguably you could say the last 2 seasons just gone, we've won the transfer market. You know, and you don't get any trophies for that. You don't get any. Yes, we did finish 4th in the league and stuff, and this year, we get into Europa League. But I don't know anything, you know, before, because I've just seen somebody has DM me going, Neil, why are you not being so optimistic on signings? I am optimistic on signings. I just don't think we'll
sign players.
I just don't think we're going to go out and sign 4 50 million pound players, because we can't. Because the reality of the situation is we can't do that. We don't have the money to do that. We don't have the wiggle room to do that. But we will sign players. And people will feel that they're overwhelming. And, you know, just like people did with Andres Garcia, and 6 games afterwards, people were saying that he should be starting over Matty Cash. And, you know, that I'm not giving out about that. I'm not saying that anybody's wrong to do that. But we also have Daniel Malen that barely kicked the ball in anger for more than 10 minutes a game over last season as well. So there's a couple of players, Onana, there's a lot of players that still have to really be kind of massaged into this team as well. So it's like, for me, the urgency to go out and splash on players and have them now. The goalkeeper was the big one for me, as I said. The goalkeeper has to be in before we play Walsall, had to be in pretty much I would have wanted the goalkeeper to be in 5 days ago.
Yeah.
But after that, I'm okay to kind of, because Emery doesn't bring players in and play them like doesn't bring a multitude of players in and start playing them straight away. He did it with Onana last year. All right, he's done it with
Kamara was injured, wasn't he?
Yeah, Kamara was injured, so there was a necessity from that. So like, Emery will understand that any players we bring in, we will massage them into the team over the course of the 9 months of the league season.
Yeah, look, like I say, we will sign players. I think as well, it's a case of I still think someone needs to move out to give us a bit more headroom, a bit more wiggle room to be able. It might be a case of like one biggish player leaving, and then we're in the position where we can sign 3 or 4 players that we perhaps need, and we spend a bit of money. I think that is something that needs to happen. I don't think, unless someone moves out, I don't think you'll see us spend loads of money. Obviously, if a goalkeeper was to go, if Martinez was to go, we'd sign a goalkeeper. But I do think from an outfield perspective, I think you're looking at maybe one player going to be able to get 3 or 4 outfielders. You know, I do believe that that's how it's going to be this summer. But
I wouldn't also be surprised, Dan, as well, to see us work the loan market. Like, why not? I know people say don't fall in love with loan.
We worked it well in January. It still helped us, whether or not they've stayed permanently. It was an effective tool for us in January, and it enabled us. Doing that enabled us to have a strong second half of the season. Now, I still think they'll look back at last summer and think if they could have their time again, they'd do things a little bit differently. If you're looking around Philogene, perhaps they wouldn't spend that money. They'd have done something else. They'd have done something different, or maybe even kept their powder dry in that position and saved that money for January. But they didn't, and they'll have probably learned from it. They've not made many mistakes over the last few windows, have they? So keep the faith. Signings will come, like we say, probably at the weekend when Neil's away. But good to know a second choice goalkeeper is possibly close, and there'll be more to come over the next few weeks as well. So Neil, I think that does us, unless you've got any other transfer business you'd like to talk about.
No, seems that Aston Villa have finally signed a 16-year-old Ivorian. Let me just bring it up. What I just literally, my boredom got the better of me today, and I was trawling through the internet, and it seems that Dasso Ibrahim will join once he turns 18. He trained with us last year. Trained with us last year, when he was only 15 with the academy, and looks like he's going to sign for it. Well, that's the big one. Get Dasso Ibrahim on the back of your shirts. Be ahead of the curve. He's obviously going to be the next Luka Modric.
Yeah, the teenage Ivorian. That's the one that we all wanted this window. So yeah, big news breaking there from Neil Dunworth. Neil, thank you ever so much for joining me for some late night transfer talk, and thank you to everyone that's been involved in the chat as well. If you have watched this live on YouTube or on YouTube after the fact, then if you could subscribe with your post notifications on, that would be really, really appreciated. And if you could check out Match Bingo as well, that would also be appreciated. If you're listening via Apple or Spotify, if you could leave us a 5-star review on Apple, or just leave us a nice comment and give us 5 stars on Spotify, that again would be very much appreciated. And don't forget to check out Neil and Paddy on the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast as well, where Neil does a lot of scouting about players that will probably never sign, but we all enjoy it anyway when Neil does his scouting. When he gets himself on Y Scout and he does his business, we all enjoy that. I'll be back tomorrow with a show, so watch out for that and keep your eye on our socials so you know when all the content is coming out. But if you subscribe, you'll know anyway, so that's absolutely brilliant. Right, I'm going to go to bed. It's absolutely sweltering in my office. Have a great rest of your night, and as always, up the Villa.